Hello, and welcome to a special edition of Up Close, on location on METV. I'm Charles Clapsaddle, station manager for Manatee Educational Television, and it's been our pleasure over the last few years to talk to some of those great people in our community who continue to make a difference. And on this edition of Up Close, we're very pleased to have with us Executive Chef Greg Campbell. Greg is the general manager and executive chef for Pier22. But his story is unique about growing up with a love for cooking and a love for food. Greg, thank you very much for being with us today. And we've been wanting to do this for a while because your facility, your Pier22, is one of the signature places in all of Manatee County. But your story is unique too. But before we get into that, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
Where I'm from is quite a long story. I start from birth. I St. Petersburg, Virginia, and then when I was 3, I moved to Germany. When I was in Germany, I was there till I was 8.
Wow.
When we left Germany, went to Rhode Island to Washington, D.C., D.C. to Georgia, Georgia to D.C. again, then Baltimore, Ocean City, parts of Delaware, then south to Florida, then back to North Carolina, then back to Florida again. So, and I've been here in Sarasota, Manatee County now for about 10.5 years. So,
that in itself, growing up as a young man must have been quite an adventure.
Yeah, it was definitely a lot of adventure. I feel like I've prior to the age of 8, lived a completely separate life. So, that's living in Europe as a small kid was definitely cool, but the experiences were not as memorable as they would be as if I was an adult, of course.
But one of the things, and you've talked about this before, is that you've always grown up with a love for cooking and a love for food, and that was kind of instilled into you at a very young age. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my mother tells the best story of when I was 2 or 3 years old, when we'd go out to restaurants and I'd get up from the table and walk over to other tables and stare at their plate of food until they fed me. So she always said that I had an affinity towards food, even at a young age. And my sister will tell you that, eating sand out of the sandbox was another one of my better traits. Well, but my family gives me some pretty cool credit sometimes.
But I think one of the people that you've credited with really teaching you and kind of giving you that love for food and love for cooking was your grandmother.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah,
tell us about her influence, and when did that start?
Well, it started when when I was a young man, a young boy. I was 8, and my father passed in a car accident, and we moved to Rhode Island. So we spent a lot of time with my grandmother, and of course my sister and my mom were always around. But my grandmother always gave me the choice. Do you want to go outside and clean up the yard, or do you want to stay inside and cook? And so I always thought I was smarter by staying inside and cooking while my sister went out and sat on the wall behind her house. I was in the kitchen, slaving away with Grandma. But when you're that young, you don't really realize how much influence somebody has on you till you get older. And that's kind of what happened with my grandmother, because she'd put me to work in the kitchen, have me do what I thought was menial tasks, but were actually, engraving.
Pretty significant.
They were very, very significant. Yeah, talking about, how to, you sequence of events when you're making chicken soup. It's not the chicken soup that makes you better. It's the love that you put into it. And, those kind of comments, as you're growing up, kind of, they learn you and you don't even know it. And then when you decide you want to be and have a passion for something, then all of those little influences seem to come back. So I try to do that.
And that's got to be important. Each one of those little gems of wisdom that's imparted. You go, well, I can use that. I can develop.
Yeah, then that's exactly what happened. Some of the other things that she would do is, when we went shopping, and I've told this story before, and the importance of good shopping. And my grandmother never went to the grocery store per se. We'd go to Narragansett and pick up, caw hogs, and then we'd go and we'd pick up to the Dewdrop Inn going out to Narragansett. We'd stop and pick up, clam juice because nobody would, sell the clam juice. And then we'd go to the produce store. Then we'd go to the deli department, the meat guy. Then we'd the dairy was delivered to her house, and so shopping with Grandma was a 6 to 8 hour process. And
That's great.
what she'd always do is bring food with her, and all these people that she shopped with were her friends, because she was there 2-3 times a week, and they knew her by name and knew what she wanted and knew how she wanted it cut and prepared. And man, it was neat driving around. I can tell you, it wasn't the most joyous thing in the world to do, driving around 10 hours a day. And
but at the same time, at a very early age, I can only imagine that you got to see, what constitutes good stuff, good produce, good meat,
food,
good things. So you would go to those individual places instead of like a package store where everything comes prepackaged, and you would see that fresh produce and fresh fish.
Yeah, and it's not just that. My grandmother's French. Simone Hubert was her name, and when she was cooking, she'd always make sure that we used everything, and that was the other big thing that she taught me. She always used to say she makes things with love and bacon, because as a French, everything is cooked with bacon grease. And I remember sitting next to her sink, she'd save all of her bacon grease in an old jar, and she'd strain it through a coffee filter and get the stuff out and keep reusing the bacon fat. And that's was one of her primary things that she used when she baked, when she greased pans, it was bacon grease. So
everything had to taste pretty good. Using that.
Yeah, and so I've kept the term "love and bacon," thanks to Grandma. She was definitely a lover of bacon.
Well, and you grew up. You've got this kind of knowledge being instilled into you. You've got this love developing for cooking. What next? What kind of as you grew and you went through high school? Tell us how you.
It was interesting. I started cooking young, of course, and then when I was really young, I can tell you probably the worst job I ever had was getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and raking the rocks at the playground at Burger King. Ooh. Believe it or not, that was a job that I had. I had a lot of things that I did, but I worked. I didn't work there in the kitchen, but I did work for an Italian restaurant called Romeo's in Augusta, Georgia, and they were full-blooded Italians, Gene and Rose, Romeo, and it was 80s, and it was a different world back then in the way that restaurateurs operated. So it was very tough love. You did things right, or you didn't do them at all. And I remember Gene was probably one of the meanest guys you'd ever meet. And instead of just telling you didn't do it right, he'd scream and yell and throw things in the trash can. Sometimes hit you with the dough.
Really?
Yeah.
So
that's the restaurant world.
That's a tough way to learn.
It was the way that you learned, and if it was supposed to be minced, it needed to be minced. If it was diced, it was in the trash can.
Really?
And so the quality and the standards that they followed were incredibly high. Their torturous ways of getting it across to you was a little bit to be said for. But that's how I learned. And I know a lot of guys these days, in around my age, can remember back in those days when, labor force laws weren't the same as they were
that's
today.
not the same as well. But also you learn not to cut corners.
Yeah, never cut corners. And my grandmother always taught me that. And everything was with speed, and everything was fast. You have to execute it, and it takes time, and it doesn't come easy. And cooking at a young age, I worked my way up with them. I started with them, washing their pickup trucks, and I think I was 14 or 15. I don't remember when I started, but I was young, and I, washed their trucks and sweep the floor, and then they'd put me on the dough table, then they'd put me on the meatball table, and then the next thing you know, I was making pizzas and strombolis, and then 16 years old, I was in the saute station at an Italian restaurant working as, what they would call their saucier, I guess these days. I made all their sauces and pastas, and it was pretty crazy.
At 16?
At 16, yeah. And when I left when I graduated high school in Augusta, Georgia. I can tell you, I'm not a golfer, thanks to growing up in Augusta, but I did go to the Masters many a time.
I bet.
I did some landscaping and some other stuff. But when I graduated high school, I went to college in Augusta for half of a year, and then we decided to move back up to D.C. My stepfather relocated, and so we moved. I moved with them, even though I was graduated high school, and I could have stayed. I decided to go and experience DC as an adult, and that's when I got into restaurants in DC, in and around DC. Did several
there's
things
plenty
up
of
there.
them out there.
Plenty of education up in Washington DC. So, that's when I made the big leap there.
Well, there had to be a point where you said, I enjoy this, I'm pretty good at it,
Well,
I've learned a little bit. Did you make a kind of a decision that I want to go in the culinary, I want to be a chef?
I didn't know exactly what I wanted out of, the restaurant business. I knew I was good at it, and that, it fit my personality. Of course, everybody around me was saying, no, don't do it. There are statistics that say that, nobody keeps it as a career for life. I think it's 3% of 3% that keeps it as a career for their entire life. And that motivated me because, when you look at the real numbers, that there's maybe 10, 15,000 people in the whole country that'll keep as a career for life and be in management and be successful or an entrepreneur. It motivated me, and everybody saying you can't do it motivated me even more. And then my ADHD and my constant need for action, I was like, this has got to be good. My mother always said you could either be a restaurateur, Greg, or an air traffic controller, but those are probably the only two things that you would be able to figure out. That was back when I was in high school.
Because you can handle multiple things at multiple times with the same kind of focus.
Yeah, and I tell you what, when I was in high school, I took a lot of art classes, and I was really good with pen and paper, and at least I thought that I was. And so I took a lot of art classes in college, and I think that helped me, or in high school. I think that helped because, food is a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of chemistry and science and art. It's a lot of different things. So
psychology.
Psychology part's a whole nother. Once you
another program entirely.
Once you get from behind the saute pans and you start to have to utilize your people skills, that's probably one of the most. That is the most important quality that you could possibly have, because you can't do anything. You can't be successful in this business without an army behind you, supporting you.
Right.
Going to battle for you every day, because that's what it's like. And the team that I have now have all been with me for an extended period of time and are wonderful, wonderful people.
Exceptional people.
And exceptional. And
that's one of the things I think that kind of sets Pier22. Aside from the food, which we'll talk about later, but you also have that service-oriented, detail-oriented staff that want to make each and every dining experience unique and good for every time that they come.
That's what it's all about. I tell my staff all the time that we do something that's really quite simple, and that's we feed people and we make them happy, and the answer is yes. No is a tough answer. No takes a lot of energy for a lot of people and takes a lot of time out of your day to respond with no. So my staff's ultimate response needs to be yes, and the goal is to feed them and make them happy. So it's really quite simple if you really get down to the nuts and bolts of the restaurant business, and that's what motivates the folks that we have here. And I tell you, I've 150 plus employees right now, and I would hope to think that 100% of them are perfect, which
And I think everybody that dines here and had an experience here walks away with that same kind of experience.
Yeah, well, we make mistakes. We're a restaurant. We're human. We do the best that we can. But at the end of the day, it's you're on a tightrope with every guest. And I say that to them all the time. You're on a tightrope. You're either gonna succeed or you're gonna fail. And there's no really happy medium. There's no in between. It's you either had a great meal and great service, or you had a great meal and bad service, and guess what? You failed then. So, making sure that people understand that through, psychology, sociology, is key. I tell you, I took psychology classes in college. I never graduated college. I was too motivated in the restaurant business.
Move on.
Of course, I was a kitchen manager. I was working, 12, 13 hours a day, going to school at 10 o'clock at night and going till midnight, and then having to go do it all over again.
It's demanding.
And I had made my career choice at that point. And the last year that I said, I'm going to make one last push for this and see if I can at least get something. I took some hotel restaurant management classes and hospitality law classes, which I think helped a little bit. I actually Joe Theismann's son was in my
really?
was in my hotel restaurant class. Yeah, Theismann had a restaurant.
He had in the
DC
DC area, Theismann's,
yeah,
right?
Theismann's, yeah, he sure did. And I went to school with him. He was a nice kid. He was my age, but you know, I tell you, it's funny the success and the failure of whether or not you go to college or you go to culinary school or any of that. I think really is as important as you want to make it. You know, I have lots of culinary students that come through and I help train and develop. And I think that's a big deal. And I think that you know, Manatee County especially is doing a great job of, you know, training some of these younger kids coming up and coming through the ranks of MTI and USF. And,
USF has a wonderful
you know, there are
school.
great programs. Even the high schools have great programs. It's really nice to see. You know, I think Manatee County has really kind of been cutting edge with what they're doing from a culinary standpoint. We're trying to provide restaurants with culinary.
And to have them work under your kind of leadership and your kind of vision makes a big difference. It allows them, you know, to see, you know, how to work. You can impart your kind of vision to them and give them, you know, some kind of insight. As I'm sure that people gave you as you were developing your craft and you're developing your techniques, there are many people in your history that, you know, provided you with that kind of insight.
Yeah, the funny thing about the restaurant business is the aha moments come to you when you're looking for them. And when, you know, if you're not looking at the guy next to you, if you're not looking at the cook next to you, you're not looking at the chef, and making sure that you don't look at them with envy, but look at them as what can I learn, what can I take back. You know, not going to culinary school was tough for me. My friends went to Johnson & Wales, and one went to CIA, and I couldn't afford it at the time. I was working, I was, you know, trying to pay for school and make ends meet, and you know, it just wasn't in the cards for me. It was for them, but you know, I had to pick up books, and I had to watch the guy next to me and emulate what he was doing, and you know, say recipes. I've got bookshelves of recipe books that, you know, I've tried to read, most of them cover to cover, but you know, of course, work in the business, you're not allowed that kind of time.
And Greg, I'd love for you to take a moment. You know, learning to be a chef is a process. There's so much technique, so many varieties to learn. You know, from making a stock to making, you know, fish, all of these things. You have to have this wide variety and a deep understanding of all of the processes that go into it.
You know,
and you develop this over a period of time. You know, sometimes you might want to concentrate on pastry or
It's a lifetime, Charles. It is absolutely a lifetime. I am by no means, I don't regard myself as, you know, a great chef per se. I mean, I think I'm a good cook. I think that I know how to put things together that you know, that taste good. You know, I don't have the culinary background that some of these guys do that are out there, but I can tell you what I try to do is create things that taste good. And at the end of the day, that I really don't necessarily think that matters so much. Just as much as I love what I do, I love for people to enjoy what I put in front of them. It's funny, I've had over times, you know, people say, wow, you know, your descriptions, you know, you could sound so much more profound. I'm like, you know, as long as it tastes good, I'm really not concerned with what we call it. You know, there's so many different ways to make something taste good, and there's 1,000 different ways to make the same thing. You know, I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges that I have, is that, you know, everybody's had Thanksgiving dinner. Everybody's had, you know, sweet potato casserole or broccoli casserole, or you know, somebody makes a beef rillette or a short rib, or, you know, but there's a million ways to make all of them, and none of them are right. None of them are wrong. It's just the variety. That's why, you know, I'm devoted for making things from scratch. I'm devoted to my trade. I'm devoted to making sure that what we do here, you know, we're not buying something that's pre-processed or already put together, and you drop it in the fryer and cook it. I mean, our chicken fingers off the kids menu we make. I mean, we you know, do we have to do that? No, but do we choose to do that? Absolutely. We bake our own breads, we bake our own burger buns, our own dinner rolls, all of our desserts are scratch. I mean, everything that we do.
It's the mark of a good restaurant.
Well, you know, and I tell people, you know, it may not be the best key lime pie with a meringue on topping, but you're not going to get this key lime meringue pie anywhere else.
Right.
Period, because I know that it came from my hand, from our creations, from the help from my pastry chef of putting things together. And that to me is critically important. It's the biggest thing that we do as restaurateurs, and I challenge anybody that is taking things out of a box and putting it in the fryer and buying pre-shredded cheese and putting it together and that's not to me what
that's not you.
and that's not me, and it's not what it's not what this business is meant for. This business is meant for quality things that you can't get anywhere else, and I stand by that.
Well, and I think the results is in not only the vibrancy of Pier22, but the people that come and flock here during the season, even when it's not in season. And I think as I said earlier, this place is really a signature place for the entire Manatee and for this region. And I think that's a direct result of the care and attention that you put into food. But I want to take a moment, if I can. Here you are, a young man. You're in college. You're here. This is the career path I want to take. You moved into other restaurants and with other people that you worked under, and you were learning that trade, developing your skills, honing those abilities that would lead you to become the chef that you are now. Was there someone, or there are several people that you can remember with great detail that said this person made a difference?
Yeah, there's
really a difference.
There's a lot of people like that. I mean, I tell you, every cook I cook next to, I'd pick something up from them. A lot of nights we'd stand on the cook line and everybody would be talking about what they were doing the night before, and I always tried to segue the conversation into food, and creating things and asking them questions about how they would do this or how they would do that, and that was real the education. I can tell you that it is really hard business to navigate without keeping your eyes wide open to everything around you, because there's this luxury of time that you don't have in this business. So most of your learning is from sight and watching and touching and feeling and making sure that you're trying different things at home, and you're pulling ingredients, you're adding ingredients. My wife's learned to cook in the past couple of years, and she's learned to cook a lot, and so she's making a lot of different meals and trying different things, and she pulls things off the internet all the time. And when she first started doing it, I'm like, oh, well, she'd always ask me questions about the recipe. I said, well, don't read the whole recipe, because the majority of them are possibly not going to be right, because people are just throwing things out there. So it's a process, and so she's learned that process, as a couple years worth of heavy duty cooking.
Did you give her tips every once in a while?
Oh, of course, yeah.
She maybe a little less, or
it's funny. I get demoted when I go home to dishwasher. I come home and there's and I jump right into the dishes to try to help keep her up.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and so I'm fine with that. But and so that's the biggest thing, is that it's a process. It's not something that's just going to happen, in one day in one recipe. Or I remember trying to make gluten-free dough, for several things that we use here, and it took like 30 tries to get something that we were comfortable with and we liked. And three different guys going, oh, what about tapioca flour? What about some soy flour? Let's add, we got to have xanthan gum. And so we're adding all this stuff a little bit at a time. Yeah, it's like a big chemistry experiment. And then it turns out, you're like, oh, that was terrible. And then start over again. It's it's part of what we do is in creating, is it takes multiple times to get something right, and sometimes you make something out of the gate and it's great, and it lives on your menu forever. I remember a mussels dish, the mussels that we served here about 12 years or so ago. But my sous chef at the time was like, there's a few egos in the kitchen, let's put it that way. And he's like, I make the best mussels ever. I can make better mussels than you. And so he wanted to have this mussels throwdown. And of course, I'm busy. I'm running through my day, and I don't have time to, put this stuff together. Well, he's pulling out fennel and Pernod, and I mean, he's got a little of this. I mean, it's like a 6-hour process for him. He's going. He makes the sauce. He's
challenge.
Yeah, it's a challenge. He's ready to knock me off the mountain, right? and so we're getting ready to go, and he's like, "Are you ready to go?" I'm like, "I haven't even thought about this for a second." I remember we went on the line, and he's putting his muscles together, and we always just do this thing where we'd no sight, put it in the window, nobody knows whose was whose, and let the servers try it, because that's the best way to know. And everybody puts their piece of paper down on who they liked, and I'm standing and sauteing. I'm like, I don't know. I just threw some wine and some stock and some garlic and threw the mussels in. I'm looking around for something else to throw into the mussels. And, I'm right next to the salad station, so I grabbed some bacon. I threw that in, some blue cheese, some tomatoes, some spinach. Toss that around real quick, added some whole butter, thicken it up a little bit, and put it in the pan. It was like literally 2 minutes. Turn around, we fed it to the staff, and and I won by a landslide. It was hilarious, and I didn't put any. I'm not gloating. I'm just telling you how funny sometimes when you put things together. And I've been serving the same mussels now for like 12 years. It's hilarious, but that's the way things go sometimes.
But it is an experiment.
Yeah.
It's like finding those things and knowing as a chef that this goes with this. This is a nice combination, and knowing through your experience and your knowledge and background, this will work well together, or this won't work. So you don't need to overthink it.
All food has I tell people this all the time. I said all food has a best friend. They have this best friend herb, and I always relate things to relate things to the guys in the kitchen like that. I think chicken's best friend is tarragon. My personal belief. So I always make sure I have a little bit of tarragon in with the chicken, which always sets it apart. No matter what we're doing, it's just something that I've learned to do. Chili. The best friend to chili is dried green pepper powder, or green chili powder, which is from New Mexico. And I don't know anybody else that can get it. I have a friend who brings me a big bag of green chili powder from New Mexico, and I add it to a tablespoon of it to every single chili recipe that I put together. But it's chili's best friend. So there's all kinds of stuff like that through the restaurant world.
But you enjoy, and not only just talking about Pier22 and all the many dishes that you have, but it's also that joy of creating too.
Oh yeah.
Something will come to you, as you mentioned, Thanksgiving dinner. How do you make that unique? Are you constantly kind of looking and developing things?
I wish I was, Charles, but as the general manager and executive chef is a huge undertaking.
Absolutely.
And I can tell you that's the one thing that I'm challenged with at this point in my career is finding that time still to be able to put menus together, to I'm constantly dealing with people, and of course they're the most important part, but if I've got an army of staff that I can educate and get them great, creative and motivated and doing the things, then their creative side comes to play, and then they get involved in some of that creation, which is what makes things better.
And I think people need to realize that it's not only as the general manager but the executive chef, there's just a whole slew of responsibilities and obligations
the scope
that
is
you
huge.
have to fulfill. We're management and personnel and supply and demand and all of those things. Those all fall under your leadership.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
And that's a lot of work to do.
It is, yeah.
Aside from being just an executive chef as well.
That's a lot of this stuff's the fun stuff. When we go through remodels, as often as we can, and do design elements, like putting the big bougainvillea up on the back terrace, or remodeling the deck bar. That stuff is fun. And that's where you can kind of get creative and learn and of course, as your ball gets bigger, I call it my ball, and to get to a certain point, you have to keep massaging that ball, and then the ball gets bigger and bigger and bigger the more you massage that ball, and the longer you're there massaging that ball, the bigger it gets, and that's what's happened here over the past 9 years, is that you just keep massaging the ball. My menu's grown. We got to a turning point, I think maybe 5 years ago, And we were looking at our outdoor patio, going, it's casual. Looking at the inside, going, it's a little upscale. Sophisticated casual maybe is a good term for it. I don't know the buzzwords that go around, but I think that's pretty good. Seemed kind of accurate. So we said, okay, well, we only have one kitchen, so all the food comes off of one line. We don't have a kitchen for outside, so we can't. So we have to do something for everybody. Right. And so going through the process of growing the menu to where we can have something that everybody will like, whether you just got off a boat in your flip-flops and your tank top and you want to see my lizard t-shirt, or you're coming in for the theater, to see a nice play. Sure. You got to have something for them too. Everybody. So building a huge menu, I can tell you a lot of comments I get, oh my God, how do they execute a menu this big? And sometimes I ask myself, I have no idea. But at the other times, but when I really look at it, it's because of the people that I have. It's because of the level of standards that my cooks and my sous chefs and the wait staff, and to navigate that. I mean, we have servers that are 40 hours plus in training before they even take a table. That's tough, and it's tough to hold on to people. It's tough to get them to be trained right. I mean, that's where, we really, are constantly putting a lot of energy and staff and
one of the things too is, you have a combination of your staff, you have your line people, your sous chef. I mean, all of that has to be organized, and it's almost choreographed. Many people have been here for dinner, for special events. This is a kind of a go-to place for the entire. And it is. There's a dance to it. There's a choreography to making sure, and as you said, it's that tightrope of things. Right. And it's a tightrope, and you're balancing dishes at the same time.
And by the way, we haven't mentioned yet the catering company, which is
another fascinating part of that. But one of the things I wanted to mention, aside from your catering entity, is that when you develop that menu and you look at the variety of things, a lot of this you'll look at as that executive chef and go, yeah, I'm not sure about this, or yeah, this is a really good one, or let's try this type of angle to it. So those all lay upon your shoulders as that executive chef to come up with that kind of complete menu that satisfies everyone, but at the same time holds your standards of,
I've been told
originality and freshness and things from scratch. All of that kind of weighs on you.
Yeah, I've been told multiple times that I'm crazy, for coming up with certain things for the menu, and I tell you, I've got a couple really good examples. One was putting fresh game, buying game, and I buy a lot of game here: buffalo, bison, venison, elk. I mean, we've served a lot of different games here, and when I first put on the menu, who's going to eat a rack of elk, in Manatee County in Bradenton, Florida? And I was like, well, let's give it a shot. I mean, there's nothing wrong with trying. And so I put venison on the menu one night as a very first night. This is a fresh game, and I did it with strawberry rhubarb jam and a demi and we sold like 45 plates of it. It was crazy, and people are going, "You got to be kidding me! You're selling venison!" And it was great, high quality venison tenderloin that was incredibly expensive. So we priced it as low as we could possibly get it,
just to
try to encourage it. But yeah, it was phenomenal. Another menu item that I put on, and we were stretching for sandwiches, for lunch. And so, my staff thinks I'm crazy. We do lunch specials all the time, and I give them the funniest names. They think that they're hilarious. But anyway, that's another subject. But I found an outlet for fresh local alligator, and everybody, their idea of alligator is tough and it's breaded, and and there's only a certain demographic that'll eat it. And so I said, well, let's put an alligator sandwich on. And so we scallopini the alligator real thin. We honey mustard and fried onion, marinated fried onions and lettuce, tomato, and put on the menu. And we sell like 20 of the dang things a day. Everybody said, "Who's going to eat an alligator sandwich?" I've never heard of an alligator sandwich before. I'm like, let's give it a shot. Now it's it's one of our most called for lunch items because it's actually it's really good, and the honey mustard kind of cuts into the saltiness of the alligator, and it's just balanced real well. It's got a good balance to it, I think, and people really enjoy it. It's one of those another one of those things that you sometimes take a shot in the dark, and
that's going to be
against everybody's will and against everybody's better judgment. And sometimes you stick your neck out like that, and you have some winners. I've had some failures. I promise you. They're all my children, but yeah.
But that's part of the creativity of being a chef. Is knowing, let's try this. I like this. I can make this. I can make this into something that people would like and enjoy and relish. That's part of being that creative part. There's a whole technical part of being a chef and knowing, temperatures and things of all of those.
All kinds
but
of
the
stuff.
Creativity part of it is something that you embrace wholeheartedly.
Yeah, that's the challenge at when you get to a certain level of responsibility and you're working with people mostly and guests and clients and friends and parties and weddings and brides and you're dealing with all these people all the time. And then, somebody goes, one of your guests says, "Oh, Greg, when are you going to do a new menu?" I'm like, "Oh, it's time, isn't it?" And they're like, yeah, it's been 3 or 4 months since you've done a new menu. I'm like, "Oh, again. Now they come." And so then you get, it almost seems like they all know that it's time. And then everybody starts saying, "Do new menu." And then, changing that hat, Charles, I can tell you, is probably the biggest challenge because you go from operations and grinding out operations and details and and specifics and P&Ls and budgeting and and doing all of this operational stuff and then going boom, put a creative hat on.
Now I
have to be an artist, and I can tell you that is my biggest challenge I think today is to continue to try to be creative, to try to drive that creative side of what we do as a
and to make it continue,
operation.
because this is a business. You want to have that creativity. You want to have something new. You want to have something unique. And as you can see, whether it's a lunch or a dinner or special occasions, Pier22 continues to be that kind of place that people hold in high regard. And if that wasn't enough, aside from that, you've also undertaken and have undertaken for a period of time now a whole catering entity as well. And that catering entity, is from throughout the county. So there's such a wide variety of things that you're doing with catering. And I'd like for you to take a few minutes to talk about that because it's not just weddings and banquets. I mean, these are for large organizations, large events that are happening. And that in itself, you still have to have the same quality and the same taste and the same things, but you're not doing it here. You're taking it on
putting it in the back of a truck and we're driving it to people.
And why is that important to get into the catering business for one? And what a challenge is it for you?
3.5 years ago when we decided that we were going to begin catering, we went to our first event, and I think it was maybe 40 people or something. It was the first catered event that we had, and we were putting all of our stuff in the back of a pickup truck, and it looked like it looked like Sanford and Son, with the stuff hanging out of the back of the pickup truck.
I was going to say the clamp it.
The clamp it.
Sanford and Son's probably just.
So we're driving to this event, and I'm following in my car, going, "My God, what did we get ourselves into?" Because we're stocking trucks, and we're trying to figure out what we needed to bring, and we got there, and I said, "Guys, this is how we're gonna do this. We're gonna make sure that we give everybody, make it nicer than what they expect, no matter what they paid, no matter what they've done, no matter what it is. This is an event that is going to be a memory for them for the rest of their life.
Exactly.
And we have got to give them more than what they expect, and have a higher expectation, and give them more than what they expected from us." And as a restaurant, you're challenged because people expect the same thing that you're going to get within the four walls somewhere else. And we were challenged from a we had to rent everything. We had to, it was interesting.
Preparation.
But we went there, and when we got done with that event, the homeowner was elated and could not speak more about how much time we took with her personally, how we left her house, how, you know, in better shape than it was when we arrived, and, you know, we knocked it out of the park, and when we left, I said, guys, we can do this.
We're onto something.
We're onto something, and let's just get more organized. And so we, you know, Michelle is the director of Catering Events, and she has been since day one, and she's done an amazing job at wrapping her arms around the people and wrapping her arms around the guests and the clients and giving them exactly that, more than what they would ever expect.
And it's really grown too. I mean, you've done a number of large events, you know, the Manatee Performing Arts Center, the Hobnob, all of these events that require a great deal of precise and dedicated not only service, but also that freshness that you're known for.
You know, the danger of a catered event is so large. That's what, you know, the general public, you know, maybe doesn't fully understand. You know, when you go to an event and you're feeding 450 community members, and you're expected to feed them all within 15 or 20 minutes. You've got a salad, you've got an entree, you've got dessert, you've got, you know, these things happening. They've got a 1 hour and 15-minute lunch break, and you've got to execute that without an issue. You want to talk about riding on a fence of failure or passing. If I were to send 450 well-done steaks out to a room full of my community, you know, it would resonate for years, you know, not days, not tell 10 friends. Now you've got 450 people telling 10 friends, and that's a dangerous road to be on. But again,
each event, you've got to be spot on. There is
no margin of error. There is zero margin of error on an event of that kind of magnitude. And I can tell you, you know, we always participate in any fundraiser around, and I've done a lot of donations of cooking in people's homes, you know, 10 to 12 people, you know, and that I think is also another critical part to, you know, making the catering company successful, because it's special.
It's part of giving back to, and
it's
you
very
are a
special.
community involved and a community aware person, and you were always involved in many things. You know, you participated in not only the METV fundraiser that was huge and very successful, but you've done countless others for different organizations, and because of that, you know, your position within the community is one of high regard, and I think that's only rightfully so. But I want to take a moment, because we're kind of winding down a little bit, and I want to talk to you a little bit about what do you say, you know, and you have so many fresh faces here working at Pier22, young, enthused, and engaged people that, you know, this might be the career that they're looking for. What do you say to those individuals who are perhaps in culinary school, perhaps they're not, perhaps they're just, you know, getting their feet wet? You know, obviously for being the chef and the general manager here has been, you know, tremendously successful. But what do you say to those young people out there that might be looking at a career in culinary or follow in your footsteps?
You know, there's the most important ingredient that you have to have in this business, bar none, is desire. There's nothing more important than that, and beyond that, a willingness to learn. But if you have high desire, I believe everything falls underneath that. You know, your willingness to learn, your drive, your passion, your eagerness, all that stuff falls underneath, you know, having high desire, because, you know, this is an incredibly difficult business. You know, you know, of course, I have people approach me and say, Greg, I want to open up my own restaurant, and I've got all this money, and I tend to always give them the same answer, and that is, do you know how to make $1 million in the restaurant business? And they go, no, how? I say, start with $3 million. You know, and because it is a challenging business, and you know, it is, the margins are so small. You know, mistakes, I mean, you know, a mistake, a bad food cost month can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. And so you have to understand how to navigate all of that. And I've, you know, hopefully no offense is taken on air, but, you know, I've had a doctor come and ask me, and, you know, the response to that doctor is, you know, I'm not going to open a medical practice tomorrow if I had the money, So you know you have to understand. So you have to understand the business, or you have to find somebody that is incredibly highly talented and full of desire and understands how to navigate that and make them your partner. Yeah. That's that's the only way to navigate this business. And people say 96% of restaurants fail. Well, 96% of the people don't know how to run a restaurant. Right. You know, there's 3% of there's 13 million people in the restaurant business today. This is very close to a true statistic. It was a couple years ago that I read this. 13 million people in the restaurant business, 3 million of them keep it as a career for life. And then 3% of that 3% are entrepreneurs, chefs, or restaurateur or true restaurateurs. It's like 13,000 people. Wow. That's not many. That's not many people that know how to navigate this business. So when you look at how many fail, that's
we're not talking about franchises. We're talking about restaurants that are unique.
That statistic is actually all the way through the hospitality industry, through fast food, through chains, through hotels, through any type of hospitality food business. 3% keep as a career for life, and 3% of them are management or entrepreneurs. That is an incredibly small number. So for anybody going to get to fully answer your question, for anybody to get into this business and have dreams and aspirations, you've got a long road ahead, and you have to have that desire and that straight ahead. No matter what, you're gonna have failures, you're gonna have successes,
and the ability to navigate.
And the last thing that I want to make sure that I say is that ball. You start with a little small ball, and you keep massaging that ball. That means one ball, not 10 balls. You can't jump from ball to ball to ball and keep massaging that ball. You have to stay with the same ball for as long as you possibly can, and that will turn into one big ball of restaurateur, of understanding, of this building's incredibly, and I'll segue into this because I think it's important to talk about. This building was built in 1926. It's the most photographed building in Manatee County. It's got an incredible view. It's got thousands of, I don't know exactly how many square foot of serviceable space. Right. It's got an indoor component, an outdoor component. It's got an inside bar. It's got a sushi. It's got all this stuff going on.
All those combined.
Everything that I did prior to being here prepared me for this. And so now all I'm doing is I'm massaging that ball. And for 9 years, that's what we've been doing is making it bigger and bigger and bigger, trying to be as successful for this facility as it deserves, as being a landmark building. It deserves a landmark restaurant, and that's what I'm trying to create. And I think that to some degree I've had some successes. Am I ever satisfied? Absolutely not. Everybody has goals and aspirations, and I can tell you my goals lie with my staff and my people and making sure and seeing them achieve their goals, because the more that they achieve their goals, the better we're going to be as a company. I
would suggest to you, that the success of Pier22 and how it's become part of this, is really up on your shoulders. Even though you have a great staff and a great facility and a beautiful location, all of that, kind of stems from the leadership and the vision and the drive and the desire that, you pass down to everyone that's involved. And I would suggest that's probably the case. But I want to take a few minutes to talk about your thing. I mean, this is an incredibly demanding job. It's the hours in the restaurant business are very compelling. It's nights, weekends, it's holidays, all of those things. Tell us how you manage that. You have a wonderful family, and tell us a little bit about them and how you manage that.
Well, I think that's twofold. One, the reason why I'm willing to put in these kind of hours is because of my desire to be here and my desire to make this building as wonderful as it can possibly be. Hugh Miller has been here for me. He's the owner of the facility, and he's been an amazing man and good to me and my family and helped me along in my business sense. And we've had a lot of long talks, and that drives me even more when I have someone like that I'm working with every day. Makes it a heck of a lot easier.
Sure.
And then secondly, my wife and daughter are incredible people. Luckily, my wife's independent enough to not need me to navigate the world, which is great. And she's, we met in and around the restaurant business a long time ago, and she's been wonderful and supportive and helpful, and a shoulder to lean on, and she's a great partner, and I'm glad to be with her. And my 13-year-old daughter, it's interesting. People say, "Are you going to have more kids?" And I always said, I have a pie, and my restaurant pie, slice of that, the pie is pretty big. And so then I've got to split the rest of my pie with my wife and daughter.
Sure.
And so if I've got one wife and one daughter, then it's a small piece of pie, But if I add another child, another kid, it's an even smaller piece of pie. Or if I get a dog, and then I got to cut the piece of pie even smaller. So we've been able to navigate this through a lot of effort and a lot of hard work on our part as a family. But I tell you, I do my best, and I'm there for everything that happens. That's important.
Significant.
Am I the last one to show up at Thanksgiving? Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Do I even want to eat Thanksgiving dinner after I feed 1,300 people? I'd rather have a hamburger. But but I'm there and I make it, and I'm smiles and
that's
we,
part.
And that's good. And sometimes I'm like the hero. I show up at the last minute to the party. It's like, "Woo, Greg's here!" And then everybody goes to sleep.
And I'm sure that you get your requests for advice all the time. Well, Greg, how do I do these carrots?
Yeah.
I mean, how do I get this fish to make and I'm sure that's kind of a constant thing.
Yeah, it is.
Which kind of leads me to my question. It's a weekend for you. You've got some time off. What does Greg Campbell cook at home? Do you like pull something out and go, well, I want to do a little something here. I want to do a little. What is your pleasure when you have the time and you're relaxing? What do you cook up for you and the family?
A bottle of Silver Oak, a bag of Cheetos, and some beef summer sausage. I think with spicy mustard is probably one of my favorite things.
That's a kind of a guilty pleasure.
I'll tell you one quick story. When my daughter, it was her first Christmas, and we were sitting around watching TV, and of course my daughter's not even a year old. She was born in August, so she was maybe 4 months old. It was our first Christmas, and it was really cool. It was Christmas night, and I look over at my wife. She's asleep on the couch with my little baby girl in her arms. And I look over. I said, "Now's the time to crack open that bottle of Silver Oak." And so I sat down on the couch. I turned on, I think I rented the Hulk when that came out. I grabbed a bag of Cheetos and was going to town on the Silver. They actually paired nicely. And I got through the first bottle of Silver Oak, and the whole outside of the wine glass was covered with the Cheetos
Cheeto fingers.
Yeah, the Cheetos fingers. I had to change my wine glass out for the second bottle. I don't remember if I got all the way through it, but I did get all the way through the movie, The Hulk, with my
Well,
wife and daughter.
maybe you could do a pairing here one time with the Silver Oak.
Yeah.
Greg, we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I just want you to take one moment. You've come a long way since your grandmother was taking you around Rhode Island and shopping and teaching you how to bake and to find those things, and through your varied career of learning this and from that Italian restaurant where you diced something and that got thrown out because it wasn't done the right way, to now one of the most respected chefs in this entire area. Again, this is a signature place for this community, not only to enjoy, but to also come and eat, and it's part of their family, to come here. What has this all meant to you? What do you want, you and all of your work and effort, what do you want the community and you to take away from your efforts here at Pier22?
I've shared this before with some folks in the restaurant, and one of the most important things to me, and I don't know where this stuff comes from. I don't know where your biggest deal in your life comes from. At some point in time, something might have happened. I don't know where, but I asked myself that question. What are you doing this for? Why are you trying to feed as many people as you possibly can? Why are you putting yourself through all this? And for some reason, I just don't want to be forgotten. And I mean, I ask myself that all the time, like, why are you, you know, feeding all, why are you going through this? Why, you know, there's got to be an easier way. And I like the fact that when somebody comes in and truly enjoys and loves what I prepared for them, whether it be their wedding, their rehearsal dinner, whatever, they don't forget, and I like that feeling, and that's something that I try to make sure that I put that memory into people every day, and that's really what drives me. At the end of the day, is that, you know, I don't want to be forgotten, and with that being said, I don't want this restaurant to be forgotten. I don't want people to forget about their experience here, about the staff, about, you know, the view, the food, you know, et cetera, that we try to provide for people. We're not perfect. We are far from perfect. You know, we've got many challenges, you know, ahead of us and behind us, and navigating those challenges. But I can tell you what makes me feel the best is when, you know, a 92-year-old grandmother comes up to me and says, "That was the best Thanksgiving dinner I've ever had, young man," and that makes you feel good.
Gotta make you,
and that's what what makes you feel good. And that's what makes it great. Or when the bride sends an amazing meal about the amazing food, about the amazing service, about the centerpieces, and goes on and on about how we made her special day so important. And you know, I had a conversation the other day with somebody. You know, it was somebody in another business that did something else, and we were trying to navigate, you know, some issues, some circumstance, and I said, you know, I have brides that come to me, and we do, you know, 500 weddings a year, or wedding associated events a year or more. I don't really count, but I can tell you that I have to execute that wedding. Because that's the only wedding, hopefully, that they ever have. And and so I can't mess, even though I've done 500 of them, I have to put 110% into that one little rehearsal dinner, or that one dinner, and because I'm never going to be forgotten. Whereas, you know, in every facet of any business, you know, if you go through that attitude with
make
that,
it the best.
Make it the best, because you're going to create a memory and they're never going to forget you. And that's to me is what this business is all about, and that's what makes it so important. That's what makes people so passionate in and around it, is to make sure that they know that it is pass or fail. You're on that tightrope. You can either fail or you can pass. And by the way, this is one of the most unforgettable moments that somebody's going to have. You know, from birthdays to, I mean, I could go on and on.
Well, and I would just suggest to you that, you know, through the thousands and thousands of people that have come here and that you've served and you've fed, that you have created a wealth of memory.
Yeah,
as you said, it's very eloquently, you want to make this the one that they won't forget.
Right.
And I would say to you, not only it's the environment, and it's not only the food, but it's also the service, and it's also the care and the attention that you put into things.
Yeah, thanks,
so I would say continued efforts, and we'll come back and see what you do in another, you know, a year or so when that menu changes. But I want to take the time now just to thank you. I know how incredibly busy you are, and you know how busy being a general manager and being the executive chef are, but you know, congratulations not only to your staff and your servers and all of the people that make this work, but also to you for making this such a wonderful place in Manatee County for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah, thanks, Charles. Thanks.
And thank you for joining us on this very special edition of Up Close on Location. Thank you, and we'll see you next time.